folks, good evening and welcome to Phantoms Monster's Personal Reports, where I narrate and discuss some of the cryptid and unexplained sightings and encounters submitted to Phantoms and Monsters and the Phantoms and Monsters Fortean Research team. So thanks for joining me. Phantoms and Monsters radio channel is made possible by you clicking the subscribe button and by you sharing our programming. Super chat, super thanks donations are appreciated. The Buy Me a Coffee link and banner are also available, so thanks for your consideration. Now, if you're in the chat tonight and you have a question, please use all caps. Vincent will mark which each one and for me to answer, and I'll get them at the end of the narration. So tonight we got a few doozies. Been some strange things coming in the past couple of weeks. So this first one, where a young Evanston, Illinois man is at a local self-storage facility, and while there he hears banging sounds and eventually investigates, where he encounters what he described as a white, fleshy, insect-type humanoid. Now he wrote, "I live in Evanston, Illinois, just north of Chicago. I was asked by my mother's friend to move some stuff to a storage unit nearby. I had not been working because of COVID, and the pay was decent, so I went ahead and agreed. Now, it was raining all day off and on, but at times it got so heavy that I couldn't even transfer the boxes from my car to the unit. So I just get comfortable inside the unit and listen to some music while I wait for the rain to clear up. It's cozy in there, to be honest, and the rain just keeps getting worse. It's not very cold out, though. So I'm just chilling when I start hearing this banging noise from nearby. Now, it sounds like something's hitting metal at first. I think that maybe there was a car accident on the nearby highway, which is North Lincoln Avenue. But then I realized it was coming from the other direction, and I really don't want to go outside and get wet. So I tell myself that someone probably dropped something, like nothing serious. But I continue hearing various banging noises, so I still didn't bother checking. But as it continued, I decided to check it out since the rain had let up a bit. So I walk outside and turn the corner and see this massive hole in the fence leading to a little wooded area at the North Shore Channel Trail. I see this white thing moving near and under the dumpster by the fence. I'm thinking that it was a large white trash bag, but it just didn't look right. I'm confused, and I'm trying to get a closer look at this thing. It may be about 100 feet or so away from it, and I see something sticking out of it, and it started making a clicking sound. I say, "Hello, who's that?" I immediately regret yelling out. Something big squeezes out from underneath the dumpster. Now, it looks like a pile of fleshy tissue with spike-like protrusions. It stands 4 feet tall, but then it extends up over 6 feet. It looks like a humanoid spider or other insect, but with white flesh. Now, it doesn't have an exoskeleton, just smooth white flesh. The head is weird, kind of insect-like with no mouth that I could see. Now, the eyes were human-like and had a reddish glow. It had long slits along the side of its head. Now, it stood there clicking and watching me. I could sense that it didn't want me there. I was wondering why I was still there. I hadn't run off, but I was frozen in place and terrified. I had heard about the Chicago Mothman and was wondering if this may have been it, but it didn't resemble anything that I had heard about. Then I felt a sudden rush of calm come over me, and I was able to break the trance I was in. I hauled butt back to the storage unit, locked it up, and got in my car and quickly left. When I looked back in the direction, the creature was gone. Now, I returned the next day to finish unloading the boxes from the car as fast as I could. Now, this happened in the spring of 2020. I haven't told anyone about this. Now, I did talk to the witness, and his anxiety was pretty evident during the conversation. I think he encountered something. I had no idea what. I don't think it had anything to do with the Mothman. I mean, even though this was close to Chicago, and we have had sightings up near the Evanston area. So I don't know what this was. So another tale from Chicago. And look, we've gotten a lot of weird things out of Chicago lately, other than the winged humanoids. So a Chicago woman is at her father's apartment, and she's on the balcony taking a break when she observes a Glimmer Man in the tree below her. Now, as another witness as well. So, I had recently received this account, and she states in what she sent me, I'm no storyteller, but I will try to recall as much detail as possible. Now, my experience happened on September 2nd, 2022, not that long ago. I had been out through the day running a few errands here and there for my dad, who was elderly. Now, later that same day, to return back to my dad's apartment, which just happens to be a tall residential building in Chicago. His apartment is 6 floors up. Now, at some point during the early evening, I decided to go out on the balcony for a quick cigarette. I was standing there just staring out into thin air and not really thinking about much or doing much. As I stood there with my cigarette in my hand, I shifted position and began to observe a very large tree about 20 foot away. It was roughly about 15 feet down from me. I noticed that one of the branches on the tree was bowing quite heavily, which I remember now thinking back, and was quite odd at the time. As I'm staring at this branch and trying to make sense of what my eyes are seeing, I have this horrible feeling come over me. The most intense sense of dread and fear. It was like almost every part of my body was screaming at me to turn around and run, but I didn't know why. So at that very moment, the bowing branch that I had just been observing began to shake violently despite my internal instincts, still screaming at me to leave. A curiosity had gotten the better of me, and I started to move along the railing to get a closer look. Then I saw it. Now, what I saw at first was a small glimmering form. As I stared a bit closer, this glimmering human figure that shimmed a yellow-white color. I snapped out of my fixated stare and quickly took a step back from the railing. It suddenly hit me that what I was looking at was like something straight from the movie Predator. More specifically, when the Predator used camouflage. At that very moment, when I realized what I had just seen, this thing dropped out of the tree and hit the ground below. It landed directly behind a man who had just happened to be walking past at the time. The man immediately spun around, assuming that someone had thrown something at him. The only thing I noticed was a cloud of smoke or dust arising from the ground behind the man. Now, I waited for some time expecting to see this thing reemerge from the dust or smoke, but it was completely gone. Now, at the same time, another neighbor just a few floors below had also observed exactly the same thing that I had, and they managed to confirm all the same details. The neighbor and I then managed to track down the man who was walking past a few hours later. We had a conversation with this man, and he said that he felt an impact but didn't see anything when he turned around. He also went on to report that he felt like the same dread that I'd experienced only a few hours before. Now, does anyone have any idea what these beings are? I feel like they can be dangerous. Now, I was eventually able to talk to both witnesses by phone, her and the neighbor. They both very apprehensive about this entity. Now, this witness who wrote me believes that this entity still inhabits the area, and she occasionally experiences a feeling of dread when she visits her father. And the location is the Groveland Park neighborhood, which is actually just south of downtown, not far from the lakefront. So it's a high rise. I know the building. I did dig it up and figured out which building it was. So, we're getting some weird stuff out of Chicago, and let alone, the winged humanoids, this and other humanoid beings that we've had reported to us, as well as alien type beings. Is it connected? I don't know. It could be, but at this point, I really don't know. So the next account, two feral hog hunters are set up in a field using thermal scopes. Now, the eyewitness observes an 8 to 10 foot tall hairy biped with a dog-like snout literally grab a large hog and rip it in half. Now, this witness wrote to me, I am a rancher in Oklahoma. Feral hogs are a problem in this area. Now, I live north of the Red River on the Oklahoma side, close to the West Cache Creek. One night, a friend called me to go pig hunting with him on one of his friend's fields that's getting destroyed by pigs. Here in Oklahoma, it is legal to hunt pigs and coyotes with thermal scopes. Feral pigs are mainly active at night. So we rode by the river, then walked possibly 150 yards, set up behind a fallen log. We sat and waited. It was a beautiful, calm night, and moonlight made visibility excellent even without the thermal. So after about 30 minutes, we heard this screaming. It was very loud. We looked at each other thinking it was possibly a cougar, but couldn't tell exactly where it came from. Now, when we heard a pig squeal on our right, in my head, I was thinking a big cat called a pig. I looked through my thermal. I froze. An 8 to 10 foot tall creature had this pig in its hands. It wasn't a small pig, maybe 250 pounds. It was squealing and fighting the strength and size of this thing. It was amazing. It had a long beard, dog-like snout, and hairy, but in my thermal, the images were white, of course, so as far as the color, I'm not sure. Now, as I was watching it literally ripped the pig in half with its bare hands, like a sheet of paper, and threw it on the ground. It started walking towards us. I nearly crapped myself. I literally froze. I couldn't pull the trigger. In my mind, I was telling my hand to pull the trigger, but I physically couldn't. Then all of a sudden, a massive log, maybe 30 foot long, 2 to 3 foot round, flew over the top of us. I jumped up and ran. My buddy was right behind me. We got in the ATV. I started it and held my foot to the floor. We were traveling about 60 miles an hour. It'll run 80 miles an hour, but I don't believe it was at top speed yet. We busted through the gate to the pasture. I didn't even have the thought of getting out and opening it. We hit a ditch and went airborne and started to do a front roll, thinking this was going to hurt. The next thing I remember, we were sitting still, not moving, and not hurt. We were sitting next to my pickup and trailer. What the hell? We loaded it up and went in his house in silence. Not a word was said. And we pulled up to his house, went inside. His wife asked, "What's wrong with you guys? You look like you've seen a ghost. Where are your guns?" I said, "I think that it can keep the guns." I never even realized our guns were left lying by the stump, but I didn't care. I was glad to be out of there. Now, I live about 40 miles from him. Now, this is the creepiest part. When I parked the truck and walked to my front door, I noticed something in my yard. About 20 yards from the front door is that rifle I had left at the river. That thing knows where I live. It's 40 miles away. Nothing has happened since, but I don't go out at dark unless I absolutely have to, and haven't been back to the creek or river since. And I don't plan to, but I do feel something unnatural saved us that night. Now, that was actually transcribed by from the YouTube channel Roundtable of Knowledge. That's a resource I use occasionally. The gentleman does get some pretty interesting stories, but that one in particular I thought was worth bringing on here and reading. So another strange account where a Lawrence County, Kentucky woman tells her son about a hairy humanoid creature that would come down from the mountain and into her backyard at night, and she had seen it twice. So this is what he wrote me. Now, this happened in the summer of 2020 in Lawrence County along Blaine Creek in eastern Kentucky. My mom's home, where I grew up, is situated in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains. There are no houses or neighbors within a half mile of her house. The area is simply beautiful mountains. One night, her old dog was barking, whimpering, and growling. He wouldn't stop acting up. My mom was confused since there was no outside noises that she herself could hear. The dog was pacing back and forth to the door and windows. And after about 30 minutes or so, she decided to grab her flashlight and go outside to make sure everything was okay. Now, no animal had been messing with her trash can, so she figured a dog was picking up the smell of a raccoon or another nocturnal creature. She scanned her yard and the creek and didn't see anything out of place. So she turned to go back to the house, and that's when she saw it. I will give you the best description that I can from what she told me. Now, I've never seen it myself, and I hope I never do. She said it was standing on its hind legs. These hind legs looked like an animal's, but the front looked more human. It had patches of long, light-colored fur all over the body and legs. Now, the top looked like a humanoid man, while the lower part looked like an animal. The face was very odd. She called it an alien ape man. She said that it stood about 7 foot in height and was muscular. She stood paralyzed with fear, shining her light on it, as it looked at her. Then it started walking on all fours out of her yard toward the back, toward the mountain. It did stop and look back at her a few times, but finally disappeared into the dark. Now, there was another encounter. One night, a few weeks later, her dog began acting up again. She decides to stay inside. She turned her lights off and looked out her dining room window. Now, there was a pole light in the yard. She was able to see it again, although she was further away from her and not as detailed. She said it was the same shape, and it was the same thing she had seen weeks earlier. She backed away, from the window for a few minutes and looked out again, and it was gone. Now, after that, she would walk out onto the back porch and fire her shotgun at dusk, hoping the creature would heed her warning. It's been over 2 years now, and she still fires the shotgun every evening. The creature hasn't returned. So that was kind of creepy. I don't know what this alien ape man is. It was probably an upright canine, but who knows? Of course, when you never see something like that and you're trying to figure out what it was, I guess you kind of call it a lot of different things. So now this account is from about a group of friends driving at night in a remote area near Farmington, New York. And when they stop to relieve themselves, a pair of tall, pale crawler humanoids are encountered nearby. Now, this account came from Cam and Kyle, my buddies over at Expanded Perspectives. And, of course, they give me permission to use it. Now, what they wrote was, what the witness wrote, I believe it was 2005. I was driving around at approximately 12:30 a.m. with 3 of my friends in my car. We stopped so my friend and I could relieve ourselves off a Canandaigua road down a dirt driveway. I knew the driveway was there, having seen it during the daytime. It was just a place where the town of Farmington, New York, which is Ontario County, would dump old asphalt. I was on the driver's side of the car. My friend was on the passenger side, and both of us looking in opposite directions. Now, I saw something on the top of a small hill, maybe 50 foot in front of me. I thought it was a tree initially, but it turned and started moving from my left to my right. It was very tall, at least 8 foot, maybe 10 foot, extremely long arms that stretched down to their knees. It was gray or white in color and had somewhat of a small head. Now, the words that came to me were, "What the F is that?" But before I could utter it, my friend said the same thing. I turned to get back into the car, which was left running, but with headlights off, and I saw another one in the direction he was facing. It was absolutely terrifying, and if I had a gun with me, I wouldn't have done anything, but what I did was drive away as fast as possible. Now, the other people in the car caught a glimpse of these creatures, but not as well as my friend Rob and I. Now, initially, I could only assume they were aliens. They did not look like a monkey or a Bigfoot or anything like that. They had no fur hair and were skinny and just very scary looking. I assumed they were very dangerous. And of all the time I've spent outdoors in the woods and in the rural mountainous areas, I've never come across anything like it. Now, after that, I hadn't seen Rob in several years as we lost contact with each other. I ran into him at a gas station about 8 years ago. And the first thing he said to me was, hey, do you remember when we saw those things in the middle of nowhere? The memory to him was just the same as mine. And upon seeing me, that's the first thing that popped in his head as well as mine. Now, recently, speaking to a friend of mine who has a lot of interest in supernatural and paranormal things, I told her the story, and she suggested that they were skinwalkers. Now, she found some pictures that were animated of what they might look like. I definitely think that is what we had seen out there at that night. I would absolutely love some insight into what these things are and why they may have been there. It does terrify me to think some type of ominous purpose, that they have some type of ominous purpose or could have been dangerous. But I'd still love to know. Thanks for taking the time to get back to me and read this. I will attach the picture my friend sent me, which was, I didn't get any picture. Now, of course, I think they saw some pale humanoids, some crawler humanoids. Of course, 2005, we weren't hearing a lot about these things. And in fact, I don't even know if I had heard about any of these things before that period of time. But that area is Ontario County, is not far from Rochester, which is just on Lake Ontario. So there's, we have had a few sightings of a few alien type beings up there over time. I don't know if I've had any pale crawler sightings, but that's interesting. So I don't know what they saw, but I'm assuming they weren't skinwalkers. I'm assuming that they're crawler humanoids. Now, I'm going to talk about two winged humanoid cases we had in the Chicago area. One we just got the other day. So this first one was a couple weeks ago. A Wayne, Illinois resident had an encounter with a winged humanoid while traveling near his home. Now, the humanoid flew in front of the vehicle without use of its wings, a common trait with these incidents. Now, I talked by telephone to the witness and his initial AM about the encounter that he had with the winged humanoid in mid-September of 2022 at the intersection of Smith Road and Mount Ash Drive in Wayne, Illinois. It was approximately 10 p.m. local time, while AM and a passenger were traveling south on Mountain Ash Drive, which is near where they live, when he reached the intersection with Smith Road. He states that a 6 to 7 foot long black human-like figure swiftly swooped in front of his vehicle about 10 foot in front of him. The wings and arms were tucked against the body, and it quickly glided from east to west very close to the road. And the headlights illuminated the winged humanoid. The encounter was so fast that he could not make out the facial features, but the body and head were very human-like. Now, AM has not previously been aware of the winged humanoid phenomenon in Chicagoland area, and he found out later after searching for an answer to his encounter. So, of course, that's how he contacted me. Now, there was another sighting nearby in Carroll Stream, Illinois, in the same year. So, it's possible it could have been the same thing. I don't know. So this next report and this recent report, this is pretty interesting. This was reported to Manuel Narrated, or a UFO clearinghouse. And of course, Manuel is part of the Phantoms Monster Fortean Research team. Now, this witness stated in an email to Manuel, I was just hanging out with my friends in the alley behind a Pandiera, which is a Mexican bakery. We used the alley and the parking lot to skateboard and just hang around and talk. There were 5 of us, and we saw this thing standing on top of the flea market across the parking lot. It looked like a large man, but it had wings that were wider than a car. It was watching us, and it had very bright red eyes that looked like the taillights of a car. It stood there making these chirping noises that we could clearly hear even from across the parking lot. Now, it stood there for about a minute watching us. It made us all feel like we were in danger and that it was after us. It then shot straight into the air and flew over us. The entire time it kept watching us as it flew over. Now, my friend wanted to run, but we told him to stay still or it might chase us. And, it would lead to where we lived. I silently prayed the La Virgen de Guadalupe for protection. And this thing kept flying away from us and headed off in the direction of the arch. Now, the arch is actually that's North 26th Street, which is like a gateway. This part of Little Village has gateways or arches that go across the road to welcome people into the area. And this is actually right beside the bakery. It made us all very scared. And when we talked about it the next day, we felt that one of my friend's ex-girlfriends may have sent it after us. She practiced brujeria. And it just seems like something she would do. Now, if it was meant to scare us, then it did what it was supposed to do, as all of us were scared out of our wits. Now, Manuel talked to the witness, and he said that this sighting took place on Sunday, February 5th, which was just 3 days ago, at about 11 p.m. in the Little Village neighborhood of Chicago. He said, I talked to the initial witness who made the report, and he states that they usually go out to the parking lot and alley area behind La Baquette Bakery, a local bakery that's been a staple of the Little Village neighborhood for countless years. They used the area to skateboard, and it was a relatively safe place to hang out without having to leave the neighborhood. Now, they estimate it was about 11 to 11:30 p.m., and it was clear and not as cool as it had been the last few weeks. They reported a clear moonlit night and that they were relatively alone in the parking lot. Now, the entity was sighted perched on the roof of the local flea market, which sits on the same parking lot about 50 yards from where they were. Now, the witness states that it was a pitch black, humanoid-shaped entity that he guessed was at least 7 foot tall, but was unsure, and that had enormous wings that he stated were as wide as a car. Now, the witness describes the creature had bright red eyes, and he compared it to the intensity of car headlights or, backlights. The group said they felt scared, like this thing was after them, and one of the group felt like running, but his friend stopped them. They feared it would trigger a prey response by the entity that would follow them home. Now, the witness stated that it watched them from atop the building before taking flight. Even in flight, the entity did not take its eyes off of them and eventually flew out of sight. Now, when asked what the witness's thoughts on the sighting were, he suggested that maybe it was sent by his friend's ex-girlfriend. He recounted that they had broken up recently and she had been very upset about the breakup. The ex was known to be a practitioner of Mexican witchcraft known as brujeria. I have reached out to the other witnesses through their friend and have yet to hear back from them. I will attempt to reach out again in a few days, and any updates will be posted on the website, and of course I will update it as well. Now, Vincent's got the map and some of the graphics I had made up for this. Now the bakery location, it's not North 26, West 26, excuse me, is 3117 West 26th Street in the Little Village Plaza. The flea market, which is actually named the Discount Mall, is southwest of the bakery on the opposite side of the parking lot. The distance between the witnesses and the winged humanoid, according to the map key, was approximately 150 to 200 feet. Now, this is the 8th confirmed sighting encounter reported in Little Village, along with 3 other possible sightings in the same community. That's since 2017. So, of course, we're going to follow up on this and we're getting more information. And, of course, we've been getting a lot of sightings lately, especially out the airport. But I suspect, and this is kind of how it happened a couple of years when, you're coming out of the winter, into early spring, and then we start getting a bunch of sightings. So maybe that's what's going on. Now, if you got questions, post them, and I'll look at them. Bernadette asks, has anyone ever been attacked by a Glimmer Man? Not that I know of. It seems to me that they don't really want to be known that they're there. There's been there's been all kinds of theories about what they are. Cloaked, Bigfoot, aliens, whatever, but we always get this description of the cloaked glimmering effect or glassine effect that people saw in the movie Predator and the other Predator movies. And I always think back that these Glimmer Men, maybe the guy who wrote the script for this had actually seen something like this and used it. I don't know. But this does pop up once in a while. This is a phenomena that has been somewhat known by us now for about a decade. So just like the image that Vincent just put up, that's what people describe it as. Sometimes they have bright yellow eyes, bright red eyes. But it's very similar to what is in the movie. So I don't know. Jose Sanchez, maybe it was a cloaked phase or some kind of evil spirit. I don't know. That I guess it could be. We have really no idea what it is. Now the fact that we got this sighting in Chicago, it got me thinking. I mean, now why all of a sudden is that showing up now? It seems like for whatever reason, Chicago is a hub for a lot of this stuff. And of course, the UFO sightings we've had for years, and of course, the winged humanoids. We had these humanoid sightings associated with the winged humanoids, and in some of the green areas around the Chicago area. Alien sightings, gray alien sightings. We have had reptilian sightings along the lakefront years before that. Not necessarily in Chicago, but along the lakefront, even the other side in Michigan. So who knows? Who knows what's going on? Is it associated with the lake? Is it just associated with whatever's going on there? And of course, Chicago's well known for paranormal activity. There's a lot of hauntings, a lot of stories that have come out of Chicago over the years. So who knows? Jose asked, how much can those hogs weigh? Whatever it was extremely strong, as Nancy mentioned. A 250-pound hog is a big hog. I don't know if you're used to I've seen feral hogs. They get pretty good size. They're not as big as domestics. Of course, they're feral. They're probably domestics that got loose and then turned feral, but they're pretty muscular. I kind of describe them looking a lot like a boar, a wild boar. That's just how big they are. But that's a pretty good sized hog. Now, if this thing was that big and ripped it out, well, I guess it's possible. Vincent wants to know, have you heard other missing time with Bigfoot or dogman? It's rare. There have been, not necessarily dogman, but Bigfoot, we have heard where people seem to go in some type of trance and the thing is gone and they realize they've lost a little bit of time. Is this some type of mechanism they use to kind of hide themselves and get away? I don't know. But it does seem that is very possible. Boulder Nelson Bigfoot, how do they find us? I swear Bigfoot found my way home after many encounters 5 miles away through the woods mountains. I mean, do they get an imprint of somebody they encountered? I guess it's possible. I mean, did they have that instinct, just like a dog would have, where they would get a sniff for somebody, then be able to pick them up miles and miles away. I don't know. I don't know if they have that ability or not. In this case, since it was probably an upright canine, maybe it did have that ability. Now, as far as Bigfoot go, I have heard stories where they have gone miles and miles and have been able to pick up on people that they've had an encounter with. It's very rare, but it does happen. So who knows? Vincent wants to know, do you think this is tied to Hispanic dark magic, Chicago Mothman? Yeah, it might be. This is something we have talked about since the beginning, especially with these sightings in the little village neighborhood, since it's the Hispanic population is very, very heavy. Most of the stores are Mexican or Hispanic in nature. There's a lot of, and of course, Manuel, since he's Hispanic, he knows of a lot of this. The Brujeria, the other forms of the occult, some related to religion, such are very ripe. Many times we get sightings in these Hispanic areas, and people call them demons, or some type of summoned being. We have thought about that summoned being possibility as well. Maybe related to what I believe the Mothman at Point Pleasant was, a summoned being. And again, I had mentioned this earlier. Most of the sightings that we have had in the Chicago area, the witnesses are Hispanic. That's something we haven't been able to track down or figure out why, or because of the lore or their beliefs. Are they more prone to seeing these things? I guess that's entirely possible. But it is, we have gone back and have looked at the witnesses, and it's definitely over 50% of it been Hispanic. So, Jose asked, he mentioned it had red eyes like the taillight of a car, so red, not lit, or with a light source. It was projected light, and which is what we're getting with a lot of these. They're just not, this just isn't reflected light with it like an animal's eyes or a dog's eyes or what. These are projected light. When I had my encounter with the red-eyed winged humanoid, it was projected light. It's just like I had two spotlights looking at me, and that's pretty well what people mention here in Chicago and the areas around. So I don't know. Nancy Malcolm. Could there be a family curse or some family ties between the Hispanics and the Mothman? I guess it could be. That's a lot of curses. Maybe it has something to do with the occult. That's something we've looked into. We haven't really found any correlation for that. Some of the sightings by some of these witnesses have been described as being lacusas. Which is the large white owl, and these weren't white, but the large white owl supernatural being that is pretty well known, pretty well seen in the Rio Grande area, both sides in Texas and Mexico. So I don't know. I don't know if it is or not, but it's worth considering. And the fact that we do know now that a vast majority of these people who are witnesses are of Hispanic heritage. Yeah, I think there's something to that. So that's something we'll continue to look into. So is there anything else? Any other questions? Vincent wants to know, why are they showing up? Well, if I knew that, I'd probably tell you. This is, we really don't know why. But I wish I did. Maybe one day we'll get some more evidence, who knows. But it's something we're going to continue to look into. I think every time we have a sighting, we get more evidence, though anecdotal. Maybe one day we will get a photograph. Maybe we will get a video. Who knows? But, we're going to keep at it. M. Swords, do you believe Mothman is tied to cataclysms? No, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in the harbinger theory for the most part. The whole Mothman Point Pleasant Mothman and the Silver Bridge, I just think it was an excuse to explain why all those people died, and as to why, maybe they should have heeded a warning by the Mothman flying over the bridge. It was kind of after the fact, and most of these theories are after the fact, after the incident. Boulder Nelson Bigfoot. Any current pictures of these flying creatures in Chicago? None whatsoever. We have had some very indiscernible photographs, but by the time they got the phones out, it was at too long a distance to even get a discernible photograph. Jose Sanchez, projected light may be a bioluminescence nature. It could be. Maybe it is a natural thing to them, but it does seem awful supernatural. Projected light is just nothing that we can explain. Now, if they are a supernatural creature, maybe it is something that they can project. It's something that's part of their nature. We don't know. We don't know. Wish we did, but we don't. Carol, where do they come from? We have theories. I believe they come from another dimension, a linear dimension, and I think they have the ability to move in and out of our dimension, our Earth plane. Why they do, I don't know. But I do believe that, and I think a couple of people on the team also believe that they may actually be ultra-terrestrial beings that they are moving in and out as well. I think a lot of cryptids have that ability. So, folks, is that it? Okay, well, I appreciate y'all coming in. If you have an unexplained encounter sighting, as always, feel free to contact me through the Phantoms Monster blog site. Thanks to each and all of you for chatting and watching and listening. Please like, subscribe, and share. And if you do have a sighting report, contact me at Lon Strickler, phantomsmonsters.com. Now, later tonight at 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central on Vincent Richardson's V, be discussing the Nephilim giants of North America as he welcomes archaeologist, scholar, and author Fritz Zimmerman to his show. Then this Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, we will conduct a Malevolent Hauntings Roundtable with my guests Dave Spinks, Morgan Knudsen, and Richard Michelle. The discussions will include cases, investigations, and possibly a few surprises. And that will be followed by Bernadette McDaniel's A Paranormal Life at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Her guest will be Bigfoot Michigan Rob, host of Beyond BMR and Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob. So until then, stay healthy, have a safe, enjoyable week. Good night.